they develop auditory vertigo. So they get ringing sensation in the ears, they start feeling pukey. It's a very interesting but a very profound symptom of the vaccination because the EBV is getting reactivated. The acidity is a very profound symptom. So targeting the EBV is very essential. My mom-in-law, after taking the first dose of the vaccine, developed this acidity. We gave her my antiviral combo, which is basically a low-dose formulation of certain cytokines, and IMUSIL and EBV, and it resolved the acidity. Then, like a smart aleck, she went and took the second dose. After that, she developed severe auditory vertigo. And now we are treating it and she is almost cured of it. But we'll be getting many patients like this who have EBV reactivations. The next part is immune exhaustion. So how did we check for immune exhaustion? We took human CD4, CD8 cells and we subjected them to cyclosporin. Now, what cyclosporin does is it suppresses the expression of CD4 and CD8. After we added IMUSIL to the petri dish, we found that the CD4, CD8 expression went up back to normal in spite of adding cyclosporin to the petri dish. So we said, oh, maybe IMUSIL can work on cancer too, and we have sent it for testing now on cancer mediated immune suppression and are finding very good effects of it. So by giving IMUSIL, even in long COVID patients, the fatigue is going because the immune exhaustion is going, and that's a very important thing to remember. So how does IMUSIL work in the endpoint? It's basically blocking COX-2, blocking NOX-2, blocking TNF, IL-1, IL-6. We've also found that when giving IMUSIL to patients with osteoarthritis, RA, because it's blocking all these factors, the pain improves. It takes out immune exhaustion and handles your ROS. Now, what about other drugs used in COVID, like NSAIDs, giving Brufen, as I said. It's quite bad because it's blocking COX-1 as well as COX-2, and blockade of COX-1 is not a good idea whenever you're faced with a viral infection. What about vitamin D? So, vitamin D is also really good for COVID because it blocks NOX-2. It has a certain problem in that it increases ACE2 receptor activity. Plus, if the vitamin D is used in high doses, it can actually induce fungal growth. Now, about this fungal growth, we have a nice case to share. We had a doctor whose patients were having bad COVID and were having very bad fatigue. So even with IMUSIL, it wasn't going down. And then I told the doctor, please ask the patient to stick the tongue out. So after sticking the tongue out, we found it was completely coated white. Means the patient had a fungal infection. He was taking zinc and vitamin D together, which was worsening the fungal. So we stopped it and we gave him lycopodium, which is again removing the immune suppression of. And within less than a day, his fatigue went off and he healed very rapidly from COVID. So while vitamin D can be good for COVID, it can also be bad sometimes. There's a paper also on this. It's basically the paper talks about how high dose of vitamin D increases fungal growth, while low dose is actually pro-inflammatory and removes fungus from your body. What about vitamin C? So vitamin C at high doses induces interferon beta, but it's basically pro-oxidant. It causes oxidative damage to your cells, and hence it's actually bad. You shouldn't be doing it. At low doses, it is an antioxidant but does not induce interferon beta. So if you want to use it just for COVID, use it in a low dose as an antioxidant. But don't use high doses because it will actually cause ROS damage. I have not mentioned other things like ivermectin. So let's go to ivermectin. Ivermectin shows very good antiviral effects when in a petri dish. The problem is it does not reach inside your lungs when you take it orally. Even if you take really high doses, it won't concentrate in the lungs. So we actually tried to solve this problem. We did a nebulization of ivermectin, which was a soluble ivermectin, with theophylline. We combined ivermectin with theophylline, and this was done by a college in India called as ICT or UDCT. Is the premier college in India which is for chemical engineering. So they made this and they have a worldwide patent also on it now. And what happened is in patients with severe RDA, who have severe ARDS, when ivermectin and theophylline was given as a nebulization, it was able to dramatically decrease the ARDS and heal the patient. So again, there is a worldwide patent on it. But if you take it orally, it does not have any effect in your lungs. Theophylline was used because it's a bronchodilator, also blocks PDE2 and stops clot formation inside the lungs. So because of these two agents, it was very effective. So basically what we wanted to do is, since so many kids are also having respiratory viral infections and they have to keep getting nebulized in the hospital, we thought, well, if we make this as a nebulization, it will be so good. The mom can just add maybe like 2 drops in a nebulizer and just make the child inhale it. And it actually works very, very well. How about steroids? So corticosteroids, if you look at the long-term RCTs done on steroids for COVID, they found that corticosteroids actually increase the death rate. And they could be dangerous because when you take a steroid, you actually increase the expression of interleukin-1, which is a dangerous thing. And you suppress your immune system. Already there is immune system exhaustion, you add more steroids, it just causes you more harm. There are patients who improve with steroids though. We had a lot of data that patients do improve with corticosteroids. But it's basically like a really fine edge. Sometimes a patient will improve, sometimes a patient will die. But long-term RCTs are what matters and they show that it does not work, so it should not be used. The same thing happened even when we started doing plasma transfusions in patients. In the beginning, the Indian government hailed it as a Hail Mary and said everybody should be giving plasma after they get COVID. So they set up many plasma transfusion centers all across India and they found that patients were dying more than surviving after plasma. That doesn't mean plasma doesn't work, it just means that in long-term trials it actually causes more deaths than good. Because obviously those antibodies floating around can actually cause you immune aggregations, not just treating COVID. So these are the basic methods which have been used and we do feel that they are not good enough. So what are the uses of IMUSIL in general? Well, it's good for chronic fatigue, it's good for COVID, long COVID, it's good as an anti-inflammatory, it's good for diabetes as well. What else did we do as a human trial? We took patients' urine and measured it for this marker known as 8-isoprostane. And these were like diabetic patients. After giving IMUSIL, the 8-isoprostane levels in the urine decreased, which means that their oxidative stress actually went down. This is our human trial, I'm just going to skip it. So we checked all these parameters in the patients, basically fever, sore throat, etc., etc. Now, what our study showed is we took two patients, we divided patients into two groups. One was just given the standard of care, and the standard of care was not ivermectin, it was just basically paracetamol for fever, or maybe some cough remedy was given. And in the other half of the trial, we did the normal standard of care with IMUSIL. And what we found is when we gave IMUSIL, within 4 days, all the patients became RT-PCR negative, while only 95% of patients became RT-PCR negative if given the normal standard of care. And if you see even the COVID death rate, it's about the same. It's about 5% as a death rate. So that basically means that 95% of your patients with COVID will improve anywhere. They will just improve. You give them even PCM and they will improve. There is nothing great you need to do. But your treatment should be targeting the 5% who don't heal. Sorry for that. So this was the final trial data that in IMUSIL 100% of the patients healed, while in this normal standard of care about 94% recovered. So we found and we measured the CRP levels and we found there was a significant drop in them. We found the D-dimer levels also dropped, and we found the IL-6 levels also dropped in patients. So our safety was very good, and there were no adverse events when given IMUSIL. Okay, now our study showed that IMUSIL was 100% effective, right? But in real life, it is not 100% effective. Now, why am I telling you that it's not 100% effective even though our trial showed it? Because that's the truth of it. What was wrong in our trial which created a false error? The The false errors because in any human trial done by a pharmaceutical company like us, we are very good at picking patients, you see. We take patients who we know don't have any concomitant problems. We take patients who are not diabetic, who don't have heart failure, who don't have dementia, who don't have any other problem. So what we get are these nicely rounded study data, where we can show that, oh, it's such a great thing. So in order to compensate for these defects, we actually started training doctors and how to understand in which conditions is IMUSIL not working. So one more example, the patient with COVID was having respiratory distress, his SpO2 was not going up. And when we looked at the patient, we noticed he had kyphosis, so his shoulders were like this. He was breathing with a lot of difficulty. So in order to fix that, we gave him insulin like growth factor 1. We have a low dose called IGF-1, which actually corrects kyphosis. So as we started giving that to him, his bone improved and he was able to breathe like this. Just by opening his shoulders, his breathing improved and his long COVID fatigue as well as the COVID healed off. So these are like really interesting little things that we are teaching our doctors, that how do you actually fix these little minute things in the patient. And this is what is so critical in doing. The drug is never a hero, as I've always said. It's the doctor's ability to catch these symptoms and treat them, which is so important. IMUSIL does not have any effect on EBV. It's only my EBV med which targets it. And a lot of patients post-COVID have EBV reactivation. If you're seeing they're getting herpes, they're getting CMV retinitis. Those cases are going up dramatically. They are having herpes infections all over the skin. Post-vaccination, they're getting penile herpes as well. So a lot of these cases are coming, and we need to learn and we need to teach doctors how to handle this. So this is what we are doing as a responsible company, and we're telling you honestly that even though our trial showed 100% efficacy, it's not. There's no one pill solution for COVID or long COVID. Okay, so I hope you had fun listening to this, and thank you so much.